What we see around us tells us about who we are and who we've been.
Our structures reflect us and identify us and will tell future generations about us.
Just as creations from earlier times tell us about those who have gone before.
In these islands, we have a strong sense of place. That comes from our natural environment.
And from what we have built. We know this is unique. This is Hawai'i. Historic preservation is people caring about and saving the things left by past generations, by the original people of Hawaii,
and the many cultures who have joined us here. Let's go now, island to island, to see the treasures left by our ancestors,
for all of us to care for and pass on to the future.
Starting slowly and building momentum over 1,500 years of isolated existence on these islands, the Hawaiian culture developed. It may have begun with fewer than 100 people, earlier voyages from the Marquesas arriving as early as the year 300 AD. They encamped along the shorelines and began the long process of adapting to the place they called Hawaiki.
By the late 18th century, they had grown to several 100,000 people who lived in one of the most sophisticated, complex, and highly developed societies to be found anywhere in the Pacific. What happened in between can be told in part by their creations.
We see them on high points overlooking the ocean, along curving coastlines and bays, deep inside wet valleys, signs of life from an earlier time.
Kapo'e Kahiko o Hawaii, the ancient people, left us many gifts and many ways of knowing about their lives.
Their stories are told in dance, in chant, in legend, and in artifacts of art and craft.
Others are told in pohaku, stones, the monumental works of the people of old.
Within sight and paddling distance of one another are the islands of Maui, Moloka'i, Lana'i and Kaho'olawe, the island group that now forms the county of Maui. Although they're closely linked, each island possesses a unique spirit and sense of place and has its own treasures to preserve. Maui was the home of powerful ruling chiefs and royal chiefesses and of a strong and flourishing population. To the gods of water, of farming and fishing, to family gods and spirits, offerings were made at simple shrines and heiau.
As battles of conquest were waged by the mo'i of the chiefdom, large heiau were built and rebuilt, dedicated to the gods of war. Near Hana, on a high cliff overlooking the ocean, is Pi'ilani Hale, the largest heiau on Maui and perhaps in all of the Hawaiian Islands, which traces back to the royal line of Pi'ilani, Maui's first king.
Sam Ka'ai takes us back to the time when chiefs and priests gathered here.
Pi'ilani must have a very old history, and surely the site is a multiple construction site. It was being built over several hundreds of years, and with different generations, different high chiefs contributing to it. Perhaps starting 800 years ago, in a time of when the connections to the South Pacific were more vivid in our minds, and it's configured more like a fortress. The coastline here is very pali and cliff, and so you're not going to have a ability to be hit by naval invasion.
There is a 36-foot terraced retaining wall held together without mortar, several enclosures on the heiau platform, 2 upright pohaku, and the entire surface is paved with ili, smooth beach stones.
Today, of course, it's in a botanical garden and kept in very good condition, and there's a sense of great pride. It is a site protected, yet a site shared. One must have a special frame of mind to come here. That frame of mind should be spiritual. It is a point of cultural pride, and you can feel the presence of the kupuna ka'iwi, the ancestors of the bone. It is a place to learn how to be quiet, be alone, and be with your kupuna ka'iwi. And of course, Pi'ilani literally means the seeds of heaven. How would one water the seed of heaven? With respect, great love, and joy.
In the early 1500s, Pi'ilani's people built another remarkable structure, Ke'alaloa o Maui, also called the King's Trail. This stone-paved path began in Hana, spanned East Maui, and finally encircled the entire island with 138 miles of trail.
Today, only a few isolated segments remain, containing the madna, or power, of the work that went into its creation.
Down the coast, where 4 rivers spring from Pu'ukukui, Nawai'eha contained the largest continuous stretch of wet taro cultivation in ancient times.
Today, some beautiful undeveloped ahupua'a still exist along this coastline, a valuable resource to protect for future generations.
At the Wailuku end of this area are 2 heiau, Haleki'i and Pihana. Once surrounded by streams and taro patches, today they're in the midst of an expanding urban area.
Hokulani Holt Padilla grew up near the heiau.
The area that we're standing on right now is called Haleki'i, and the area back there is Pihana heiau. Haleki'i was a heiau for the ruling chiefs to come and worship and to live. And Pihana was one that was used for luakini, as a luakini or a human sacrificial heiau. It is most appropriate that this type of activity occur where we are at this place. First of all, we're on a ridge, and many luakini are built on high promontories or in places that are very awe-inspiring, so that when the people come to worship at a place such as this, they can feel their closeness to their gods. The area of Pihana here had Kamehameha's royal wife as her birthplace, and this was Ke'opu'olani. So it intensified the spiritualness, the mana that is located in this area. In addition to that, we know that this heiau was one that Kahekili would come and worship at, especially before he went to do his major battles.
Unlike Pi'ilani Hale, these heiau are not enhanced or supported by their surrounding environment, and little has been done to preserve these ancient sites.
This area is important in and of itself, but because of its surrounding area. It was the center of the people's life here. There were people all over. Their life was all around here. So we cannot look at a heiau as one little box without knowing and trying to preserve the surrounding areas as well, because it then does not have the meaning that it had when it functioned as a heiau.
This dune formation ends a few miles away in Waihe'e Valley, dunes that were formed 800,000 years ago.
Dina Naone Hall is part of a group trying to preserve the dunes as a cultural and historic resource.
This place is not only striking in terms of the kind of ecological zones that are here. We have a river valley bottom and terraces. We have alluvial fans. We have a high Pleistocene period sand dune. That's the last large, relatively unaltered sand dune on the island of Maui. There are low coastal dunes and flats. There's a beautiful wetland, coupled with an amazing complex of historic sites. Winslow Walker, when he came into this area, in the Waihe'e area, in 1928 and 1929, recorded 10 heiau in the Waihe'e area.
A golf course development has been proposed for this area, which would alter the natural landscape and archaeological sites that exist here.
At the center of the controversy over what is going to happen to this particular shoreline land at Waihe'e are the high sand dunes behind me. These, as I said, are the last large, relatively unaltered sand dunes on the island of Maui. And if you travel through the Wailuku district, you'll see the great destruction and devastation of our large sand dune formations that's occurred here. But these dunes are intact still, and I think that on Maui we should be able to say to our future generations that we've preserved at least one of our dune systems. Another reason for preserving these dunes, and perhaps as important, is the fact that they contain high numbers of unmarked prehistoric burials, and that's where they should stay, so that we can be able to enjoy the beauty of this dune and know that we've retained the peace of the people who are buried here. It's symbolic in a way of what we have here today, where our modern life has its roots in our prehistoric past. And for Hawaiians, knowing where we come from means knowing who we are now and who we will be in the future. So we have to protect these places because they're intimately involved with who we are as a people.
On Moloka'i's east end is Halawa Valley, one of the earliest settlements in all the islands, dating back to the 7th century.
The population increased rapidly around the 16th century. People cleared the lowland forests and built Lo'ikalo and Auai all the way from Mo'aula Falls to the bay. Over 1,000 taro patches once filled the valley.
Glenn Davis and his family are trying to restore some of the ancient systems to productive use.
They put in an agricultural system that is still lasting over 1,000 years later. I think they were very ingenious. And they were fast workers, I guess, because everything was just done like one after another, and the system just, because I can't see they're making this Hawaii portion by portion by portion. So I guess as engineers, they were pretty smart at doing it. They set up the whole system and then probably worked backwards and started opening taro patches as they were going.
One of the ancient Auai alignments here is nearly 1 mile long.
They're the most important, because with water there's life. And if you couldn't get the water down the trail to the taro patches, then there was no taro patches. It's just the most important thing, period.
This valley was abandoned after it was devastated by a tidal wave in 1946. The ancient stone constructions are now hidden by an overgrowth of non-native trees.
I don't know who brought the job upon, but that's doing most of the damage on these Hawaiis, because the root system is just pushing over the rocks and knocking down everything. And then the haole core is not that bad, but these big trees are just doing major damage to the Hawaii and to the terraces too. So they gotta go. If this goes another 10 to 15 years, then it'll be irreparable and the damage will be total. You gotta preserve at least some portion of the culture. If you don't do it, it's not gonna be there. And then they're gonna have an even harder time explaining to their kids what happened. By the time their kids grow up, it's only gonna be a rock here and a rock there. So you gotta go out and you gotta save these places now. That's the bottom line. Use it or lose it.
The shallow waters and fringing reef of Moloka'i's south shore supported the largest number of saltwater fish ponds to be found on any single stretch of coastline in the islands. Ualapui Fish Pond is being restored by a Moloka'i crew headed by Billy Kalipi Jr. and advised by his dad, Billy Sr. They are removing acres of mangrove trees and rebuilding the fish pond walls.
We lay the rocks. When we lay them, we make sure the rocks are locked. What I mean by lock is If you try to push them any angle, it won't move. Then we grab ilis, smaller rocks, and then we wedge them inside. Or we put corals, which we got right now.
It is said that the rocks originally used to build this pond came from Wailau Valley on the other side of the mountains.
What you gotta realize also, the farther the rock, the stronger the mana to the pond. So you can imagine if we get 1,000 people lining up to Wailau, hand carrying, hand passing the rock, many of them gonna get broken nails, gonna get smashed nails, but it's all part of the spiritual mana coming into the pond. The harder the labor, you can feel, the pond, the wall become part of you. So this is pride that you get when you work with the culture team. It's not, oh, it's just a job. The job is secondary. The culture to me is first. That we're reviving the culture.
Ili Ili Opai is Moloka'i's largest heiau. Kahuna from throughout the islands once came to this spot to learn from the powerful priests of Moloka'i.
Today, this heiau, longer than the length of a football field, is nearly hidden by Java plum trees whose roots grow deep into the pohaku of the foundation. On the dry slopes of Kawela Ahupua'a are the remains of a large settlement developed 400 or 500 years ago. House platforms, heiau, and shrines speak of the lives of an adaptable and industrious people.
Signs of life here date back about 1,000 years, when this island held an extensive dryland native forest.
Saul Kaho'olawe is working with other Lana'i residents to preserve many of the ancient sites. He takes us to Luahiva, above the Palawai Basin, where ancient artists looked out across the native forests and created images on stone.
We're looking at one boulder face that has quite a collection of different drawings. We cannot date the age of drawings on the surface of rock, but we can tell a drawing by its age on the kind of drawing it is. The more linear or the stick figures would be considered the older drawings. And then as they started evolving, they started to take on the triangular forms here. And then if you notice, this torso is more realistic, so it becomes a more modern drawing, I should say. We know that Hawaiians had no written language, but they did leave drawings like this. And whether or not they were trying to tell us a story in drawings, we have yet to discover. What occurs today is that many people are coming to these kinds of sites, and then they start doing tracings. They start abrading it again. In other words, they're grooving it even deeper. Or whatever process they use, rubbing chalk within drawings, have all been determined today to be very detrimental or damaging to these drawings. And if we continue that kind of practice, we might lose a lot of the information that we could learn about in the future. So we need to work at preserving them so we do have those pieces to put together in the future.
Makai of this region is the ancient fishing village of Kaunulu and the largest heiau on Lana'i, Halulu Heiau. Kamehameha I is said to have favored this site as a fishing spot.
You'll find here at Kealiakapu and Kaunulu many complexes of house sites, of shrines, of work areas. I'm sure that these kinds of complexes existed on every island, but for Lana'i, this is one of the largest complexes, where you had such a variety of house sites and shrines gathered in one area. Today we have just the remnants of a Hawaiian place, but it's worth keeping because it helps us to recreate those kind of pictures or stories that may tell us a little bit more about Lana'i's past.
Kaho'olawe in ancient times was known for its good fishing grounds. A settlement at Haki'awa Bay, facing Maui, contains nearly 200 archaeologic features dating back 500 or 600 years. Leslie Kuloloyo knows these places.
The sites on the island are tremendous. Nowhere in Hawaii can we see a complete, intact, still there together, where we can at least make a picture of what 400 years used to be like on the island of Kaho'olawe. At Pu Mo'iwi, there's a structure there. It surprised me to see this puhaku, a place where they worked at. It's like a workshop, you know. It's like a master craftsman needed time there. What excites me is why did they pick that area? So it must have been not only the locale, but also the quality of sciences. There's a type of quality stones there. The Kaho'olawe Island, I believe personally, has a lot more that we don't know about. I don't think we've tapped into its very soul or use of the area or the island. I don't think so science can give us that kind of answer. I think what science does is show us the structures on the island. But I believe the island itself has more to offer.
We've looked at only a few of the many sacred sites and works left to us by the kupuna of ancient times.
These places speak of a strong, vital people and a flourishing civilization developed over centuries. Many ancient sites are now lost through progress or the equally destructive force of neglect.
Kapoe Kahiko said, "Aloha ka'aina, malama ka'aina, love the land, care for the land."
If we ma'alama these sites and protect and preserve them, we will share in passing each island's treasures on to future generations. It's up to us.